Today, we are going to talk about income inequality in Hong Kong. We choose South China Morning Post (SCMP) as our newspaper for this social problem. The reason for choosing SCMP is that the target audience of SCMP is from the secondary school age group or above, like adults. It's likely to provide credible academic sources and provoke critical thinking and analytical abilities of social issues of readers in Hong Kong. Also, SCMP is regarded as one of the most renowned newspapers in Hong Kong. SCMP was founded in 1903 and its headquarters is set in Hong Kong. It has also received numerous international awards, such as Story Page Design, Local Issues Award of Excellence. Was a mass COVID-19 test a success for Hong Kong? We use POE to generate 20 keywords to try to search in SCMP. These are the keywords that we search is shown is the image. Then we use several keywords that are more likely to appear in the passage, such as wealth gap, income disparity, Gini coefficients, and find some newspaper that we are likely to use. By analyzing each of the newspapers related to the keywords, we have 10 newspapers that will be used in further discussion. The first passage is Hong Kong's poorest struggle to benefit from post-pandemic recovery with wealth gap and its worst in over 10 years. This passage says Hong Kong's overall poverty rate reached 20%, and more than 1.36 million Hong Kong people are in poverty. The gap between rich and poor has increased from 34.3 times in 2019 to 57.7 times in the first quarter of this year, the largest gap in the history. This passage suggests that the government offer more policies to improve the income gap, such as raising the minimum wage to $48.5 per hour, or offer more incentives to elderly residents and child carers to join in the local labor force in order to solve the poverty problem. This passage is in structural functionalism perspective. It states that the government should provide more support to the poor children, which can reduce the income gap between lower income group and high income group. The second passage is deep dive. Is Hong Kong doing enough to help poor children? Advocacy groups express that more must be done. In this passage, it states that the Children's Rights Association gave the Hong Kong government a performance rating of 0 for 4 of their efforts in 2023 to improve the lives of poor children. This passage criticized the government's subsidies and policies that are not enough to provide enough support to poor students, so they cannot join the extracurricular activities like normal students that they can join. In this passage, it uses structural functionalism perspective, which states that the government fails to provide enough support to poor students, leading to income inequality for students.
In the third article, For a Truly Happy Hong Kong, it's mentioned that the richest 10% people earn $130,000 a month at the end of the first quarter of a year, while the poorest only earn $2,300. 1.3 million people in Hong Kong are living in poverty, and about 220,000 people live in cage houses or subdivided units. It also shows that a Hong Konger needs to have a saving of $1.1 million to be confident of financially secure retirement. But at the same time, a report estimated 10,500 village houses are built illegally, and those owners are the Hong Kong rich people. It shows a huge income gap. The perspective used in this article is social conflict, since the resources and income are distributed unequally. In the fourth article, tackling the wealth gap should be high on Hong Kong leaders' agenda. It mentions that the wealthiest 10% earn 57 times more than the bottom 10%, and this shows a serious income gap. Although the government has posed some safety nets to the public, the income gap can't be relieved. The perspective used is structural functionalism, since the government failed to provide enough shelter for the poor. For the Fifth article, wealth gap between Hong Kong crazy rich. He mentioned that the income gap continues to increase due to different reasons, such as globalization, government policy, and high housing prices. In 2021, the government limited intervention continuously widened the wealth disparity. And whether it will be more severe depends on what the government will do. It is suggested that the government should follow the small market, big market mindset to relieve the current situation. The perspective used in the article is structural functionalism, since it recommends that the government should do more to solve the income inequality.
The sixth article mentions about workplace disparity. From the statistic, we can find that there's a widening wage gap between men and women in managerial positions. A possible cause of this situation is that employers still believe that men are better suited for senior positions, and they would cut the wage of women in these positions. From the structural functionalism perspective, this situation can be explained that there's a failure in the education. The education system failed to build a value of gender equality for people. And also, this is caused by the failure of the legal system and the government policies to maintain the gender equality in workplaces. And the seventh article mentions about the existing method of measuring poverty. The existing method now is based on median household income, and it is criticized for overlooking important factors such as access, debts, and non-cash welfare transfers. And this caused the failure in measuring poverty. The perspective used in this article is structural functionalism, that the welfare system fails to measure poverty and provide welfare accurately, lead to the unsolved poverty problem. And the eighth article is talking about the private sector, businesses and investors. They help the low-income youth in three ways, which are education. They provide scholarships for the low-income youth, and they build worker hostels to avoid cage homes, and they rethink the industrial policies that the businesses create more jobs for the mid-skilled labor from the more adventurous areas. Because of the productive members of the society, they will emerge from poverty through the industrialization policy. And the private sectors and the businesses, they provide help for them. And the perspective used is structural functionalism, that the government failed to provide welfare and relieve income inequality. Also, the poor families, they fail to provide opportunities for their children due to intergenerational poverty.
The ninth article, 5 steps Hong Kong's new leader can take to tackle income inequality, adopts a social disorganization approach by highlighting the widening wealth gap in Hong Kong and its detrimental effects on society. The author emphasizes that while economic growth has occurred, the benefits have been concentrated among a small group of high-income earners, while low-wage earners have experienced stagnant income levels and weakened purchasing power, as Hong Kong's ratio of median household income for the highest income group to the lowest income group rose from 25:1 in 2010 to 40.1:1 in 2020. The article also points out that the government has failed to effectively address wealth disparity and poverty, particularly among children and young people from poor households, who face the threat of intergenerational poverty due to structural inequality. The author suggests several evidence-based solutions for the government to take to alleviate poverty. The 10th article, Young, Poor, and Stuck. What can Hong Kong do to help those trapped in cycle of poverty? Also adopts a social disorganization approach by highlighting the persistent issue of intergenerational poverty in Hong Kong and its detrimental effects on society. The author emphasizes that despite the efforts of young people from poor families to improve their lives through education and hard work. They often remain trapped in poverty and due to various structural barriers. In 2020, the child poverty rate reached its highest level since records began in 2009, with 27.4% of children living in poverty. As stated in the article, experts have noted that poor young Hong Kongers struggle to escape their circumstances, and no matter how hard they work, many may stay stuck in an unending loop of intergenerational poverty. The article points out that children from poor households face numerous challenges, such as inadequate living conditions, limited resources for education and personal development, and the burden of household responsibilities. The article calls for more targeted and effective government interventions to address this issue and create an environment where young people can escape poverty through their own efforts, regardless of their family background. After analyzing 10 news articles, we found that 9 out of 10 news articles have adopted the structural functionalism approach in discussing the issues. At the same time, only one among the 10 news has adopted the social conflict perspective in its analysis. It is noted that most of the articles emphasize the drastic changes among the society in recent decades, and most of the people view the issue of income inequality in Hong Kong from a structural functionalism perspective. Thus, in this project, we are going to analyze through the lens of structural functionalism.
The theoretical approach that best explains the causes of income inequality in Hong Kong would be the socialist organization perspective of the structural functionalism approach. Socialist organization views society as a set of rules, and there are social norms that needs to be upheld for society to function properly. Social problems are caused by social dysfunction instead of deficient individuals of society. Social dysfunction is caused by social changes that occurs too rapidly, as these changes will break down societal norms and rules, and the various parts of society can no longer work together properly, causing society to break down and social problems are created. From the 10 news articles mentioned above, we can conclude that there are two main causes of income inequality in Hong Kong. The first example would be Hong Kong's rapid globalization and transformation from manufacturing to non-manufacturing activities, which means that most of Hong Kong's wealth now accumulates in the high-tech and professional industries. For example, those related to finance, property owning, insurance, or technology. As Hong Kong further globalizes, more and more money are flowing into Hong Kong to benefit these people. Those in the technology and finance business may benefit from trading with corporations from other countries, and Hong Kong's booming economy may lead to the rise of property prices. While it may benefit those who own property as they will see their wealth surge, it will also harm those without property as they will have the struggle of the continuously increasing higher housing prices. Those in the manufacturing businesses will have to move on to other industries due to their low education level, and they can only transition to some low-skilled, low-paying jobs, such as those in the retail, catering, and construction industries. These jobs are valued less than the professional jobs, and their salary is significantly lower than those in the finance business, creating an income gap. Rapid globalization has also sped up Hong Kong's development, allowing more tertiary education institutes to be established and provide more people with higher education. But this has made university degrees more common and has led to degree inflation, where a growing number of employers expect employees to have a degree, and a degree now means less than what they used to, making it even harder for those with a degree to find high-paying jobs, and even harder for those without a degree to find a high-paying job. And since a degree is no longer the pathway to a high-paying job, even if the poor gets a proper degree, it does not mean that they have properly escaped poverty and would still have to face low income, while the wealthy can continue to use their wealth and influence to gain access to high-paying jobs, further widening the wealth gap.
Besides the example we just mentioned, the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic recovery afterwards are also examples that illustrate the social disorganization in Hong Kong. First, the COVID-19 pandemic had even further worsened the income inequality in Hong Kong. In the pandemic, due to the decreasing rate of outdoor activities, the reduced working hours and job losses have further affected lower-income workers, especially for people who work in the service industry such as retailing and catering. They have more severe unemployment issues and job losses compared to other jobs. However, for jobs that are in the professional industry, such as finance and investment, since their jobs could be done remotely with working from home, they are able to keep their jobs and maintain stable incomes. This has highlighted the existing disparities in access to healthcare, education, and housing, which also have further contributed to the income inequality in Hong Kong under the social disorganization approach. Also, the economic recovery afterwards was also a factor causing even more severe income inequality in Hong Kong. The economic recovery mostly benefited the wealthy and barely the poor. The rapid digitalization of low-skilled jobs in catering and retailing services have caused workers in those industries to remain unemployed even after the pandemic. The road reopening means that professionals now have better access to a larger market, which means they are able to strive for even better chances to become wealthier. Last but not least, the government focused on the overall economic status in Hong Kong, which may also have neglected the poor and it caused social disorganization that resulted in income inequality.
I'll then provide a deeper examination and evaluation of existing situation on income inequality trends highlighted in Oxfam 2023 report. The report shed light on a concerning issue that economic recovery has not been inclusive, while GDP and stock market rebounded. Gains were unevenly distributed. Oxford found two alarming divergence patterns. As said previously, the monthly pay of the lowest income 10% household fell sharply from 3.5K in 2019 to just 2.3K in the first quarter of 2023, a devastating 34% decline. This group faced new pandemic pressure like job losses. Without adequate support, basic living costs have been unaffordable for many. Meanwhile, the opposite occurred for higher earners. The report shows the richest 10% enjoy steady pay hikes, with median monthly income surging from 120K to 132K in 2023, a 10.5% increase over 3 years. Despite Hong Kong's strong recovery, wealth has concentrated further at the top. Cooperation profits and executive pay continue growing, while everyday workers saw no improvements. The reason for this growing chasm are structural. Economic reforms have not targeted unequal access to opportunities, nor redistributed gains more progressively. Oxfam finding provides compelling evidence that recovering has entrenched from the wealth gap to inequality, leaving behind the low pay. We can see even if poor people are working, they may neither be able to resist inflation nor improving their living quality. If unadjusted, this is going to threaten long-term stability of the society.
Now I'm going to talk about the effectiveness of the current policies to do with the income inequality. And we choose about the Strive and Rise program, which is a long-term policy launched in 2022. And the aims of this policy is to alleviate intergenerational poverty of secondary 1 to 4 students from underprivileged families, and it also aims to strive for their upward mobility. And the quota of this policy is 4,000, and the duration of this policy is 1 year. And about the content of this policy, participants would act as mentees, and they would be paired with a volunteer mentor. And mentors would also share experience and help mentees to develop their financial planning concept and personal development plans. This may also help to ease the income inequality as they may find their career path and find their professional qualification through these learning opportunities. And I'm now going to talk about the effectiveness of Strive and Rise program. First, it can broaden mentees' horizons through visiting different enterprises and also joining different local or overseas tours. It can also enhance their competitiveness and also enhance their self-confidence as they would equip with different talents like learning different musical instruments. However, this policy also has its cons. First, it cannot provide long-term support to mentees as this program the duration of this program is only 1 year. it is difficult to establish long-term financial and career planning for them. And also the coverage of this program is small, as it's only covered secondary 1 to secondary 4 students from underprivileged families, which means that other students and children from underprivileged families may be rejected. And also it cannot provide immediate improvement to the current situation of income inequality. So we think that this is helpful to improve income inequality in both the short and long run.
Another existing policy is the Working Family Allowance Scheme, WFA, which is a short-term policy. The purpose of the WFA is to encourage the economically disadvantaged population to achieve self-reliances and alleviate intergenerational poverty. The allowance is dispersed based on the total monthly working hours and also the income and assets limit of the applying household, divided into 3 tiers: basic, medium, and higher allowance. Apart from that, a separate set of total working hours standard is established for single-parent households. Furthermore, if eligible, each child of the WFA applicant can receive a child allowance. The child who are under 15 years old or between the age of 15 and 21 are currently enrolled in full-time education can receive. Depending on household income, the basic, the medium, the higher, and the child allowance may be granted at full rate, 3/4 rate, or half rate. For the effectiveness, the most recent improvement is an increase of 15% in the allowance amount starting from the April of this year. And for the applicants who face practical difficulties in providing proof of household income or working hours, such as self-employed individuals, can provide a self-declaration statement as a substitute. Deciding the approved allowance based on working hours thus encourage employment among low-income families and help alleviate the financial burden. Setting income and asset limit also help direct resources to families in greater need of assistance. However, the fundamental issue is that even with a 15% increase in the allowance, it falls far short of effectively addressing the intergenerational poverty caused by income inequality. Although there are additional allowances for children, the amount is still insufficient to have a significant impact on changing their life, especially in the expensive living environment of Hong Kong. Many families express that even with the allowance, they still have to be extremely frugal, unable to address the root cause of the current social issue, and only experience limited relief from economic pressures.
Here comes to the innovative method to remedy income inequality in Hong Kong. Housing reform with government intervention is chosen with the objective of providing affordable housing to low-income groups. The financial burden for the poor decreases, and therefore they can raise their living standard by investing the money on other things. By implementation of increasing supply of public housing, property price and rent control measures, housing subsidies, and community land trusts, a more equitable society can be created. A community land trust is a non-profit organization that acquires and holds land in trust for the benefits of a specific community. It helps control the cost of housing and to ensure long-term affordability even if property price rises. Why we choose housing reform is because housing is the most expensive burden in Hong Kong, but at the same time it is necessary as everyone needs a home. The number of households ineligible to apply for public rental housing yet unable to afford private housing rose from 37,000 in 2001 to almost 98,000 in 2021. The situation is getting worse for the poor. Low-income groups have to seek other housing options with low price and low quality with compact environments. Especially for children, growing up in such environments negatively affects their accomplishments and academic performance. This will be a vicious circle of different generations for income inequality. We can take the reference from policies from Singapore. The lease buyback scheme allows elderly home owners to sell part of their flat lease back to the government in exchange for a cash payout, which can supply their retirement income. Therefore, Singaporeans have lower financial burden to take care of their parents. Instead, they are able to invest and improve their living standard. The second is three-generation flats, which is designed to provide living spaces that can accommodate multiple generations, including grandparents, parents, and children. Family members can pool their resources and share the financial responsibilities of home ownership, such as mortgage payments and maintenance costs. While the Central Provident Fund is a mandatory savings program that helps Singaporeans set aside funds for retirement, home ownership, and other financial needs, the program can be used to finance housing-related expenses and provides individuals with a reliable source of funding to facilitate home ownership, making housing more affordable and accessible. Low-income groups have a higher opportunity of buying their private property. Now let's move on to the short-term and long-term benefits of housing reform. First, regarding the short-term benefits, the low-income group will not have to pay expensive rents. By the government intervention, there will be rent control, which the rents will be lower and become more affordable to pay, and there are also vouchers that can help them to pay for the rent. Therefore, they no need to afford high rent and house will be more affordable since the cost is lower. Also, another benefit is it provides low-income group a better place to live. Because the reform is supervised by the government, which means the housing quality will be ensured. In a result, they can have a better living spaces. Moving to the long-term benefits, the low-income group can have a more disposable income. Because of the rent control, the economic pressure for them will be lower, which they will have more money to use. They can spend those money to other areas such as having lessons or buying things which can help them to gain knowledge or enhance their quality of life. The other benefit is to build a more harmonious community. Since the low-income group will know there are people that understand their needs and willing to help them, from this, the opportunity of having social conflicts on housing problem can be reduced. Next, moving to the obstacles and considerations. First, the cost. To increase the housing supply, land purchase, house construction, and maintenance are needed, which cost large number of money, and there are many more parts that also need money. To get those money, it may transfer the cost to other parts, like increasing the tax. Therefore, the obstacles is how to get enough money to complete the reform. The second consideration is community acceptance. The targets of housing reform is mainly for the low-income group. However, there are not only low-income group in the community. Also, by the reform, people such as landlords may lose their income because of the appearance of competitor. Therefore, it is needed to balance the rights of different people in the society.
Let's move on to the AI generated picture. From the picture, we can show that both the higher income group and the lower income group. The private housing in the background represent the wealthy residents. Those who dress poorly in the lower parts of the picture regard as a lower income group and live in the subdivided flats and old buildings. Income inequality highlights the significant difference between the rich and the poor, including their living environments and rights they enjoy. The lower income group receive a relatively low wage, but are required to work in a desirable condition and with a higher risk. Meanwhile, the higher income groups can just stay indoors with a better environment and no need to worry too much about the expense of housing. And this is the end of our presentation. Thank you.